Hello YouTube, Lehman Griffin here with How to Do Everything, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys how to solder. A few basic things you'll need. Soldering is really easy. A lot of people try to make it out to be a lot harder than it is. But what you do, you got a soldering gun, and there are many different kinds. You got a larger one here, and more of like a pen gun. I'm going to be using this one for today's video just for simplicity. Of course, your wire that you need to solder. And then you've got your actual solder, and this is rosin core. The size you want just depends on what you're doing. This is just basic, real thin stuff, but it'll work perfect for what we're doing. And then I've actually got this holder. It's called the Helping Hands, and I like to use it because when you're soldering, there's so many things you have to do at once. It's nice to be able to have something else hold your product. So I'm going to get it set up, and I'll show you guys how to do it. Alright, so I've got my two sections of wire that I want to solder. I've got them all spliced back. Leave enough room on the edge so you don't actually melt the insulation that's on top of them. I've got them peeled back. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to twist them together. Now there's a few different ways to do this. A lot of people line them up like this and twist them. A lot of people will lay them side by side. I found the best way, if you've got not too many strands, I kind of like to interwind them. You just got to push them together like that and let the windings kind of intertwine. And then I'll actually twist them to get everything to hold. And what that does is it just makes it a little more seamless. So when you put your heat shrink over top of it, there's no big bulge in the wire. So now that I've got those, I'm actually going to bring my Helping Hands over and get them set up in here so that we can begin soldering. So I'll clamp that side in, remove that, and I'll clamp this in, and now I've got a nice little hold on my wire so that I can focus on soldering, and everything else will stay out of the way. So we're going to begin. I've got my soldering iron turned on. It's warmed up. When you plug it in, you want to let it warm up for a while so that it'll be effective. The hotter it is, the better it'll work. There's nothing harder than trying to pull solder through a gun that's not heated up. So, my tip's kind of dirty. You want to try to clean your tip as often as possible. It gets residue on it and just gunk. So, the first thing you want to do is get your solder and get a little bit on the tip of the soldering gun. So we're going to just like that, and that'll get some solder built up on the tip. And that's going to help start the transfer process to the wire. Now the way solder works, it actually draws, if you do it, the right way to do it is to draw it through. So you want to effectively heat up the wire completely so that the solder will melt and adhere to the wire, and it'll basically form a bond between all the wires. It's like a very cold form of welding. So what we'll do is we'll start off here, we'll get a little more on the tip there, and we're going to just touch it on the wire. And what this is going to do is start heating up the wire. And it's going to take a minute. Now what I like to do is add just a little bit of solder right there to the tip. You see how it starts to transfer? And now that that's done, you can actually go to the other side. And I recommend going to the other side because it's drawn to the heat. So if you put it all on the side where the heat is, then what's going to happen is it's just going to bubble up and puddle and then drip off. So if you put it on the opposite side and put the heat over here, what's going to happen is the solder is going to draw towards the soldering iron and fill in those voids inside of the actual wire. So we'll start it and we'll go across. And as you can see, it feeds pretty fast. We'll spool some more wire here. And you keep filling it in. We'll move it back across here. Now the thicker the wire, the more it's going to take to fill it in. There's that. And now you can draw it after it's done. You can actually just use your soldering iron to draw it evenly across like this right here. And what it'll do is it'll take any clumps of solder and actually pull them around and get them to fill evenly. So that looks pretty good. Now what we'll do is we'll let it dry. let it cool off, and when it cools off, it'll actually harden, and that's what'll form the bond that'll keep it from pulling itself apart. And this is highly recommended in any electronic circuits, just because the transfer is a lot smoother of power whenever it's soldered as opposed to just being twisted together. So I'm pulling with everything I got. That bad boy is not coming apart, and as you can see, that's a great joint. A few loose wires that got out. It's pretty cool to the touch now. You can heat shrink it, you can do whatever you want over top of that. But that right there, YouTube, is how you solder, just basics of soldering electrical wire.